Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited, and I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you calling in for the first time and those who will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. We like to move quickly through these calls and bottom line the information for you. We know you're busy people. You have other things to do. We have a standard format. We spend a few minutes talking about the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar, which we continue to believe to be the base currency for the potential reset of some of these other currencies. A few minutes talking about the program we've put in place to assist you, and then we go to a brief Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about the situation in Iraq. First, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial currency holders ourselves, we're sharing with you the information that we believe to be relevant. And of course, the most relevant piece of information would be a window for the potential reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar, which we continue to believe to be January of 2021. As we speak today, that still seems like the most plausible window for the reinstitution of the dinar. And let's get into the situation in Iraq a little bit. The major issue that still remains in Iraq today as we speak is the payment of salaries. And we've discussed their options. One of their options is to utilize the CBI reserves, the reserve U.S. dollar, which is a form of an internal loan. The second option is to facilitate external borrowing from other countries or from the IMF and other agencies. The third option is to expand the economy, which can only be accomplished with the reinstitution of their currency, and that, of course, would take a little time. So they've chosen, unsurprisingly, to utilize option one, which is to utilize the funds that are being held in reserve by the IMF, by the CBI. Now, the problem with this, however, is that drops the U.S. dollar reserve currency down to the level of about $30 billion, and that eliminates a lot of the padding that they needed to cover the deficit that they can believe will continue for some months. This also takes the CBI below, on a percentage basis, the level of reserve currency that they need to hold. I don't think that's going to have any effect on the reinstitution. The IMF has a long history of sort of allowing people to nibble around the edges when it comes to some of their rules. They're not really very hard and fast about that. A good example would be the austerity loans in the EU. The IMF was constantly extending and restructuring those loans. It's not to their advantage, really, to undo these countries. So while they do establish these standards, they are somewhat flexible about that. Basically, what Iraq is trying to do is get through 2020. And, there's a saying, 2020, hindsight is 2020. Well, it's actually the reverse for us because we want to put 2020 in our hindsight. So this seems to be a year where we need to not worry too much about the things we don't have and be thankful for the things that we do have, and that's kind of the situation that exists in Iraq. Now, going into 2020, things are looking a little bit better. Between now and then, they are going to continue the monitored auctions because they are going to need the cash flow from that. But they're seeing the price of oil slowly continue to rise, and that's critical to closing the deficit for 2021. So that, coupled with the reinstitution of their currency, is probably the best combination of things that they will need to do in order to progress. There is one other short-term problem, and is that they are having a hard currency crunch. Number one, a lot of the more wealthy individuals in Iraq, and certainly the government officials, are moving their funds out of the country to foreign banks. And, of course, the auction of their currency does further deplete their hard currency as well. So basically what Iraq's trying to do is just survive 2020, because remember, they still have issues with Iran. They still have issues with COVID. Now, there is another interesting development that will indirectly affect Iraq, and that is China is sponsoring the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, the RCEP. 15 countries are included in that, along with Iraq, and 2 of the countries are Vietnam and Indonesia. Now, the reason that's interesting for us is because a lot of our people do hold the dinar and the rupiah, and in order for these countries to be able to plausibly participate in this massive trade agreement, they're going to need to get out of their program rate. These countries' currencies have been in a program rate for decades. From a domestic or internal economic scenario, that's really not a problem. It's not necessarily the best of all worlds, but it's not a problem. But in order for them to participate in these international trades, they're just going to need to have a viable currency. And in order to accomplish that, they need to take the first step, which is to reinstitute the currency at a reasonable rate, and then allow it to find its level as they float it on the Forex. So if you're the holder of the dong and the rupiah, while the China agreement from a global standpoint might not be the best thing in the world, because China is a bad player. They're just not honorable in what they're doing. They have ulterior motives. But from the standpoint of these pre-valued currencies, in a narrow sense, it's kind of good for us. Basically, if we just step back and look at it, the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar in January of 2020 makes a lot of sense. It's a new year. They've got their new budget. They've got a defined budget deficit that they need to deal with. So the increased price of oil and the reinstitution of their currency in order to expand their economy and fund their international contracts for rebuilding their infrastructure all makes sense. So that being the case, we're looking at roughly 6 to 8 weeks, and we're at the window for the reinstitution of the currency. That means that those of you that have not as yet gotten your affairs in order or may not understand what that involves are running out of time to do so. And since we are coming upon the holidays, we've got a lot of other things that are taking our attention between now and January. And so it's important that you understand what you need to do and that you take steps before it's too late. Because once the currency, I would argue, not when it revalues, once the currency reinstitutes in country, it's probably too late to get some of these things done. Now, our plan is a turnkey program. It's a 2-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a pre-RV package of asset protection trusts with the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust package. Post-RV involves all the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. So let's start with Phase 1, which is the establishment of a pre-RV package of asset protection trusts, again with the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust package. There's a very specific reason why we have decided to establish this package relative to other options, and it's very simply because this package is the best asset protection available domestically. Now, there are other entities that one can establish to provide some level of asset protection. For example, individuals can establish LLCs or sub-S corporations, and they do provide some level of asset protection, but primarily by dividing business assets from personal assets. The problem here is that possession of these currencies is a personal asset. In addition, courts have ruled that LLCs and sub-S corporations owned in the majority by one individual or a closely held group can be pierced for civil litigation. So the LLC and the sub-S corporation are not going to be appropriate for your needs. Some individuals have established an entity referred to as a revocable living trust, sometimes referred to as a living or loving trust. Now, these trusts will exempt your estate from the cost and delay of probate, and in some cases can substantially reduce and even eliminate the federal estate tax. But the revocable living trust can provide no privacy or asset protection, so they're going to be inappropriate for your needs. Now, some individuals have established a single irrevocable trust, and that will provide more asset protection than the entities I just described. However, there's an inherent flaw with the individual trust, and it's this. If any asset within that trust is involved in civil litigation, that would necessarily drag all of your other assets and net worth into that litigation as well, because they're all owned by that same one entity or person. The solution is to establish a package of irrevocable trusts. This is the only way that your assets can be protected both pre- and post-RV. And in addition, such a trust must be established prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other pre-valued currencies. And I'll review with you the reasons why. First, by establishing this package of irrevocable trusts, you will preserve your privacy and your anonymity. That's because assets within our trust package are sealed, meaning that the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Second, by establishing this trust package, you will be able to avoid personal IRS scrutiny. If you are holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, the IRS computer will probably spit out an audit. And with the potential magnitude of that revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year IRS audit. Now, such an audit would be time-consuming. It would certainly be frustrating because it's come along at the precise time that these currencies have revalued, and there's many other things you'd much rather be devoting your time to. And third, the cost of a 6-year audit would probably be more than the cost of our asset protection trust package. On the other hand, if your pre-RV asset protection trust package is in force and you have assigned your currencies to that trust package, you will have successfully transferred the taxable event of this revaluation from yourself personally to the trust. Now, this is important for two reasons. First, there's less than a 10% chance of an IRS audit if this taxable revaluation were to occur within a rather sophisticated trust package such as ours. But second and most importantly, even if the IRS determines to audit your trust, they can't do a 6-year audit. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is if you plan on gifting currency to family and friends. And many of our clients have expressed that as something that they really want to do. Now, if you're gifting to individuals that you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves or giving them the U.S. dollar lump sum after you have negotiated the exchange, that can be accomplished outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to give these individuals the post-RV lump sum, then you can gift to them through the specially designed gift subtrust. Because you're gifting through this subtrust, their U.S. dollars will be protected along with yours. In addition, the language of this subtrust will allow you to gift up to a certain amount of a currency or currencies, meaning you can gift to these individuals the exact U.S. dollar amount that you had in mind, irrespective of the exchange rate. And because you're gifting through this gift subtrust, you will be able to manage, invest, and distribute this money to these individuals as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'll give you two quick scenarios. Scenario number one, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. Now that estate must go through probate, a process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with a probate court. And that could tie your estate up for years, and in some cases even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax. This is the tax that the federal government would assess in order for that estate to be transferred to heirs. Approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate would bypass any federal estate tax. But the balance could be taxed as much as 65%. Now, this scenario is not only unacceptable, it's completely and totally avoidable. How? Scenario number 2. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to our asset protection trust package. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs that very same estate of $25 million, but this time protected in our asset protection trust package. As a result, there will be no probate. There will be no public disclosure of your estate. Your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance, and the federal estate tax will be zero, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. The fifth reason you'd want to establish this pre-RV trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One is pre-RV, one is post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. What does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you actually own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's take the previous example from before. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, assign the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. You begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth, and a couple of years down the road, someone sees that you're living rather comfortably and decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Well, this prospective plaintiff has a couple of problems. First, he or she better have a very strong case and very deep pockets, because this trust has been structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. But second, and most importantly, once any prospective plaintiff learns that pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, the only thing they could ever win by way of a civil award would be $5,000, the value of the property or the currencies at the time you transferred them to the trust, and none of the post-RV value of $25 million, there will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop loss. This protects you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a legal strategy referred to as segregation of assets. This is why we've established a package of trusts, and I'll give you an example of how this would work. We'll use the same example. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, transfer the currencies to the trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. Now that you have $25 million in trust, you decide to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary residence, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate subtrust to be managed by your master trust, and this is what constitutes the package. Now, how does this protect you from an asset protection standpoint? Well, let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your subtrusts, of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that subtrust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, making you whole. And this is important. All of your other assets and net worth are safely protected in the other subtrusts. Why? Because under the law, those separate subtrusts are separate legal entities or persons having nothing whatsoever to do with the accident in question. Therefore, the plaintiffs would have no standing to pursue those separate legal entities or persons. So your package of trusts work very much the way a commercial barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your package of trust prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies. Now, there is one other benefit, and it's this. If you are, in fact, a holder of one of our pre-RV asset protection trust packages, then you will be eligible to participate in Phase 2, all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you. I'll just make mention of one here today. Trusts Unlimited will be sponsoring a post-RV seminar to be held in Disney World, Florida, approximately 30 days after the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. Present at that seminar will, of course, be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to assist you with the management and funding of your trusts post-RV. Many of our clients have already expressed a desire to establish scholarship funds, foundational trusts, special needs trusts, charitable remainder trusts, and even the more complicated 501c3 nonprofit and offshore trusts. And the proper way to fund those entities is with a direct transfer of funds from your asset protection trust to those newly formed entities. We'll also have our tax specialists on hand. Many of you will, for the first time, be managing a rather substantial amount of money, and you're going to want to understand some of the more sophisticated tax strategies to legally reduce your tax exposure. We'll also have our independent fee-based wealth managers there as well. You're going to want to reposition assets after the revaluation for a number of reasons. First, we know statistically that 95% of all windfalls, however large and from whatever source, are lost within 3 to 5 years due to inexperience, mismanagement, and fraud. We also know that under the new G20 bank bail-in provisions, the failure of banks in the future will no longer be made whole through the general taxing authority of the respective governments, but first and foremost by the confiscation of funds at those accounts at those banks. And so you're going to want to get the money out of the banks, and this is just another reason to do so. Lastly, the general global shift from fiat-based to Basel III compliant commodity-backed currencies in and of itself is going to create extremely volatile financial markets, and you're going to want a substantial amount of your net worth in tangible assets in order to avoid that volatility. But all of these issues that will be of concern will be addressed once these currencies have not revalued but have reinstituted. When these currencies reinstitute, the calls that we do every Wednesday will cease, and our Wednesday calls will deal exclusively with our existing clients to discuss the issues of the exchange of the currency, all of the tax issues, investment issues, and fund management. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV, financial assets like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, and which trust is authorized to manage the sub-trusts, one optional gift sub-trust which can be converted to a standard sub-trust at any time, and 8 additional standard sub-trusts to hold physical assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000. But about a decade ago, when we decided to work with Dinarians, we knew that price tag was going to be unaffordable for too many. So by basically simplifying and back-end loading the funding of this trust, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. Now, there are several ways you can pay for that. Pay us up front. We'll discount the price further to $2,500, saving you an additional $500. If that's not possible, we do have a deferred payment arrangement. You'd make an initial payment of $525, which some would offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust package to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We will charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar occurs, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. Now, with this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their affairs in order and their trust in place prior to the revaluation of these currencies should be in a position to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your card would be substantially less than the $100 a month you'd pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust in force prior to the revaluation of these currencies for all of the reasons that we've stated here. Now, we will be going to the Q&A in just a moment, but before we do, and again for our newer callers, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you ought to seriously consider contacting us to get our no-obligation initial package. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for over 38 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have over 78 years' experience working precisely in this area, and I frankly know of no firm that can make that claim. Now, Bob and I have been working together for about a decade in the areas of estate planning and asset protection, and it has been disheartening from time to time to see people walk away from a sound estate planning and trust creation because of the mistaken belief that by doing so, they have somehow lost control of their assets and their affairs. However, under our system of civil litigation, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can either lose control of them or lose them outright. And invariably, it's at precisely those times in life that you need and want control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts. and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives, both pre- and post-RV, as we understand them. So again, thanks for taking the time to listen to this call. I hope you found it informative. If the things we've discussed are relevant to your situation, I strongly suggest you contact us to get our initial package. We're going to go to a Q&A in just a moment. And if you have a pen and paper handy, I will give you our contact information. Now, last week we had a problem, and for some reason I couldn't get into the Q&A. I troubleshot the thing several times this morning, and it did work, so I'm assuming it's going to work. I'm going to open the Q&A now. 2 quick rules on the Q&A. We don't take any service calls on the Q&A. Our existing clients can contact us by phone or email if they have any service issues. And second, and for obvious reasons, in order to participate in the Q&A, your name and number must appear on the screen. So I'm going to open the Q&A now. Well, it worked this time. And while I'm waiting for any questions, I'd like to give you our contact information. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trust with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. If you'd like to listen to a recent conference call playback, or if you'd be kind enough to refer us to someone that might be interested in our services, you can either go to YouTube and then go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can go to IQD calls and then go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can simply dial the same number that you dialed for this live call with the exception of the last number. Rather than dialing a 4, you'll dial a 3 and then use the same access code, which is 739-394-pound. If you'd like to be included on our email list, you can go to our website, go to the bottom, enter your name and email address where indicated. You should be on our email list within 24 hours. Bear in mind that we only send emails out very periodically pre-RV, but after the reinstitution of the dinar, emails may go out as often as weekly. Well, we have a few questions here in the queue. Our first caller is area code 347. That's 347. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is Praveen from New York. I have a question. Can either the Biden or Trump administrations of the U.S. Treasury Department, could they delay the RV again?
Well, first of all, the U.S. Treasury Department is one player in the final decision. The IMF, United Nations, World Trade Organization, maybe even the Bank of International Settlements, along with the CBI, would be involved. I'm just going to give you my opinion right now. Okay. Despite the way it looks right now, I personally think that Donald Trump is going to end up being reelected. And I don't want to get into the details about the election fraud and how the system works, but that's what I think is going to happen. But assuming that does not happen, Donald Trump will still be president until January 20th of 2021. And again, this is my opinion. I believe that he would proceed with the okay to go ahead and reinstitute the dinar. Now, if that were not to occur and Joe Biden were to, in fact, be elected as president, you got to remember there are a lot of Democrats that hold dinar. So while there might be a delay, I don't think that the election of either individual, whether it's the re-election of Trump or the election of Joe Biden, would halt the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar, because it's got to happen in order for the nation state of Iraq, frankly, to survive.
No, what I mean is because I think Trump, I think, when the history, they delayed it twice before. So do you see him or Biden doing it a third time? The
reason he delayed it was because of Iran. And since then, I think he's got Iran in check.
Okay. Well, I mean, the thing is, another thing, let's see if Biden, does get it and this Iran, if Iraq does not agree, then you have this Iran. He wants to, let's say, revive the Iran nuclear deal. Will that complicate things with the RV or no?
Of course, that could be a problem. But now we're getting into the weeds. Let's assume that the Republicans hold the Senate. Well, that Iran nuclear deal, it's just paper because it's not being ratified by the Senate. The United States sanctions are still in place, so Biden would really have to undo everything. It would be a long, arduous process. It's not like he could snap his fingers, and Trump couldn't snap his finger to undo all of that. So Biden's not going to be able to snap his fingers to put it all in place. But hopefully the reinstitution of the dinar and the situation in Iraq will be separated from what's going on in Iran. The other issue, even though I don't like it, is the China trade deal. China's not going to be happy about countries surrounding Iran not being able to be active participants in this trade deal because of the misbehavior of Iran. And China has a lot of influence on Iran. So hopefully, I know it's complicated, but hopefully whoever's elected, this is going to go through, if not in January, certainly in the first half or first quarter of 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. Bye-bye. Our next caller is area code 312. I'll take a wild guess. That's Les.
Yes, sir. This is Les in Chicago.
Yeah, what's up, my
friend? How are you?
Pretty good.
Oh, nothing much. Yeah, I missed talking to you last week, man. Had to send you a text and was wondering if you saw it.
I probably did, and you're going to have to refresh my memory because I've gotten 7,462 since then.
All righty. I'm going to have to go back to the text that I actually sent you to read it. But meanwhile, while I'm looking for it, did those 16 countries that signed deals between themselves to cut the tariffs law down to like 3%, the article said. Now, Indonesia and Vietnam were included, Cambodia was included, and a bunch of others. What will that do for the country's GDP and their dollar currency value once the RV, prior to the RV and after the RV?
Well, generally speaking, when you have international trade, what you're doing is you're creating customers in larger markets for the goods and services produced in every given country. And because of the trade arrangements, and they're basically, it's like Walmart, they're doing bulk deals, so theoretically things are reduced in price. So even if there's a tariff, if you're purchasing substantial amounts country to country, you've already got a discounted price. There's a difference between you and I going to the store and buying a pair of shoes and Vietnam coming in and saying we want to buy 50,000 pairs of shoes. So, it's a situation where the free flow of goods and services is, rises all boats. It's good for all countries. The problem is people cheat. They artificially devalue their currency, and then they get a better. It's what China did to the United States for 20 years, what Trump's trying to stop. Part of the reason China's doing what they're doing is they're basically trying to cut the United States out. What's really going on globally is it's China and the United States are vying for, the number one most powerful economy in the world. I mean, that's what's going on. And the United States got out of the TPP, and this is basically designed to replace the TPP. The United States is utilizing, rather than us sending troops, Trump's using our economic power to strangle countries. Instead of overcoming them or fighting with them, he's breaking the piggy bank. So we'll see how this plays out. But
okay. All right.
But Iraq needs China to help neutralize Iran, and Iraq needs the United States to help with the reinstitution of their currency, which long-term has got to happen. I mean, they've got all these little short-term Band-Aids, but without reinstituting their currency, they're never going to get out of the situation they're in. They're just treading water right now. So we'll see how it plays out. But I still think, all things considered, and with all of the complications that 2020 has wrought, still think January of 2021 really looks plausible.
Okay. All right. And the question on X was, is there an age limit for a person to receive a trust fund?
No. And the only thing is if you're a minor, you've got to set up custodial accounts for minors, but there's no age limit. No.
I didn't think so.
No.
All right.
In other words, as an adult, you can receive funds directly. If it's a child and they're or a minor, the funds would have to be deposited into a custodial account.
All right. Great. That's all I got for now. Say hi to the professor and have a great day.
Yes, sir. Thanks a lot, my friend.
All right, buddy. Bye.
Well, that was our last call for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. I strongly suggest you contact us to get our no-obligation package. You need to get your affairs in order prior to the reinstitution, and it looks like you're running out of time. So please contact us. We'll be happy to send you our initial package. You can review it. Contact us if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you, and there will be no consultation fee. Our next call is scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature were to happen between now and then, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency conference call. But failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, 9 Eastern, noon Pacific. Bye-bye, everyone, and have a great week.